Now that our player works, we do need something that our player needs to avoid, and we'll be creating loads and loads of objects that our player needs to avoid. It makes sense to use a special class for that, so let's create that class, and we're going to name that class spawner. Its superclass is a sprite. Don't forget to import the sprite class. Alright, now our spawner will need four things, namely the class is going to spawn, the amount of that class is going to spawn, the delay between each spawn, and also a delay maybe before it even starts spawning. So let's store those. So let's store those pieces of information. We'll have four parameters in our constructor. So first the class name, which is a string, the amount, the spawn delay, and the start delay, which will have a default value of 0, which means that if nobody gives us a start delay, then it will start immediately. Alright, now let's create variables to store these in. So and let's store them then. So class name, oh well, you get the point. Alright, great. We now have our variables. Now, every time we spawn, we want it to be after a certain time delay, and to do so, it's very convenient to use a timer. So let's do that. We're going to create a timer, which we're going to call spawn delay timer. So spawn delay timer. Import that class. Alright, so the spawn delay timer is a new timer with a delay of spawn delay, and it repeats as often as we want to spawn. Now let's still add an event listener to our spawn delay timer. And also let's import that timer event class. Now if there is a start delay, so if start delay isn't 0, then we need to create also a start delay timer. So also here we add an event listener. And we'll give it just a generic name on start delay timer complete. Also, let's add those same parameters to our first event listener, like so. And then we can also start that start delay timer. Now let's still create that function on start delay timer complete. So like so, and we'll simply tell our spawn delay timer to start. And let's also clean up our start delay timer. So start delay timer um, is null, and that will also immediately remove our start delay timer. So start delays timer event listener. So yeah, um, and let's also already clean up that start delay variable. So now what happens if there is no start delay? So if it starts immediately, well, pretty simple. We then just want our spawn delay timer to start right away. Now let's still create that spawn object function. So like so, and every time we spawn an object, we need a reference to that class we're spawning. That could be a meteor, a diamond, a laser, or whatever, but we need a reference to that. So let's create a new variable, and we're going to call that one object class, and that's going to be the class we're spawning. And we need to store that somehow. So we know the class name, which is simply a string, but we do not yet have a reference to it. So we say object class is, and this is a special function, get definition by name, and then a string, so class name as class. We do need to import that function, get definition by name. So let's do that. It's under the utils. So import flash utils get definition by name. Okay, now we have our class here, and now it's time to spawn it. So we're going to call this a variable space object, and for some reason it when using this get definition by name, it doesn't work to add then an identifier, so leave that out. But we can say is a new object class as display object. Don't forget to import the display object class. So and if we go back here, then we can also store that space object class in an array. So let's create a space object array, and every time we spawn one, we will add it as a child, and we'll add it to our array. So space object array. We will soon still extend the functionality of our spawner class, but we will need to now work on some other classes. All the classes will be spawning meteors, lasers, or diamonds, all have similar characteristics, as in they both or all are moving from the right to the left. They all need to do collision detection, so it makes sense to have a sort of more global class, which they all have together. So let's create that class, space object. So let's create that class. The class is going to be space object, and its superclass is going to be a movie clip, because we have laser, and laser is a movie clip because it has animation in it. So let's finish that. We need to do three things with our space object class. The first one is that we need to give it an initial position. The second thing is that we need to make our space object move. And the third one is that we need to do some collision detection. So let's work on that. We'll create a function init position. We'll set the X to 550, which is the complete right edge of the screen. And the second is we need to set the height, and we'll first set it to 300, which means that it will touch the bottom, because we have only 300 pixels that our objects, or at least our game, will be in. So y is 300. However, we still want some randomness to go on, as I'll call it. So we'll have a random number between 0 and 300 minus the height of the object itself. That will prevent it from extending out of that 300 pixels. So minus math random times 300 minus height, like so. So that's our random height position. Now let's do something else. We need to init player reference, I'll call it. We need a reference to our player. So let's or you know what? Sorry, let's remove that. I'll just add an event listener. Event added set or init player reference. Alright, so let's create that function, init player reference. And import that class. So import the event class. And I also see we forgot to import our movie clip class. So alright, great. Now there's a small typo, that's a capital L, must be a lowercase l. And now that init player reference, now we need first a reference to our game, so and another one for our player. So game is parent dot parent and player is game dot player. Now we need to make sure that our player variable is public, so go to the game class and change that to public. Sorry about that. Now let's go back to our space object. Now that we have our player reference, we can add another event listener and on enter frame 1. So and let's create that function. Oh. So we need to do two things. We need to move our space object, and we also need to make it do collision detection. So let's create two functions. Check collision, like so. Let's first work on our move function. So naming pretty simple. It's just x minus some variable which we'll call x speed. So let's still create that variable. And if our x is smaller than the negative of its width, which basically means if the full width of the object has gone outside of the left edge of the stage, we want it to stop. So we'll just basically that means it's useless, so we'll make it clean up then, and we'll work on that function very soon. But let's still, before we create our cleanup function, still work on our check collision, namely check collision, and that will work as follows. That will work as follows, namely if this hit test object the player, then if it's friendly, we'll dispatch an event. So dispatch event maybe player hit friendly, and else it will dispatch an event player hit enemy. Now, what's that friendly variable? That friendly variable is going to say if the object is friendly or not, because we will have diamonds as well as meteors. Meteors you want to avoid, diamonds you want to get. So it's easier to just have a variable which defines if that object is friendly or not. But let's create that variable as well. So all right, and now at our cleanup, it it makes sense to dispatch an event, which we'll call beyond stage. But we already can clean up some stuff which is going on right here. So let's stop that event listener, that enter frame one. So also I just realized we forgot to remove this event listener. After it's been added, we don't need to know if it is added or not. We can also remove that event listener right here. And let's see if we have any other variables. Yes, we do. We also have our game, which we'll set to null, as well as our player. And I think this is an appropriate cleanup. So now let's see what happens with our spawner, namely whenever our space object is done, it will dispatch an event beyond stage, which our spawner will pick up. So let's add an event listener for that. Namely, we'll do that here. Add event listener beyond stage, and we'll say object beyond stage. Yeah, that seems about right. So let's go and create that function. So let's see, we have the event class. No, we don't, so import that. And the first thing we do is we go to our space object array, as in we always know the first item in that array is the one which went beyond the stage. So we can remove that one. Now we can also remove the first item of our array, so space object array, and I think it's called shift, which removes the first item of our array, therefore shortens it. And we'll also have a variable which we'll call none objects beyond, which keeps track how many objects have gone beyond the stage. So we'll do that. None objects beyond, which increases every time when one has left. And then we will check if num objects beyond is equal to amount. We know every single one which needed to be spawned has left the stage. And what that means is when it's gone past the stage, if everyone has gone past the stage, we will call a function spawner done. Because our spawner is useless after spawning everything, we don't need it anymore. So now let's look what we can stop. We can stop our spawn delay timer, which is null. Because our spawn delay timer has a weak referencing on, the event listener will be removed, but we still can empty our space object array. So I think that's about it. So, but you still would want to dispatch an event, namely spawner done. So and then our game class would be able to pick that up and remove our event listener. Now we have our space object class, but this is a very global one and it doesn't have any graphics or whatsoever. We will need to create our own classes, so go to File, New, ActionScript class. Let's create our Meteor one. Superclass is space object, and suddenly I have a lot of errors. So let's go to the first one. Here, that should be private function. Alright, we only have one error left. Sorry, we still gotta say it's a game, and then we will say this one as player. And if we save that, yes, we are fine. So, let's work on our meteor class. Namely, we'll say x speed is 3, friendly is false. Now let's do the same for our other classes. So now our laser, x speed is 2, friendly